There we are. We are live um, with with Julianne Lee from our favorite new line, the Adored Beast Apothecary, and we're super excited to be carrying these new products. And this is a great line, but a lot of the line does require some conversation. And so we wanted to invite you on today to have some conversation about your company, Adored Beast Apothecary, and talk a little bit about your philosophy, how you got started, and then highlight some of the really good staple products. And so, without further ado, tell us a little bit more about how you came about starting the Adored Beast Apothecary.
Well, it's kind of perfect timing because I this is why I look like this. I look like if I look like I just like rolled in on a storm, that's exactly what I've just done. I have a large rescue farm in Nova Scotia, and we're getting really, really severe weather, like life-threatening severe weather. And we just got a bunch of new rescue horses in, and so we're running around building shelters and trying to figure out how to get blind pot-bellied pigs certain ways. And it's just it's kind of it's an intense time when there's storms, especially something that's so drastic, right? Like it's going to go from 3 to minus 27 in 8 hours, and it's like crazy winds and things. So, anyways, apologize for my appearance, but saying that, it's how I got into it. Um, my mom was in dog rescue from when I was 3, and until she died when she was 93, and she was still doing rescue when she was 91 when I was down there for her 91st birthday.
Wow.
And yeah, so I come by it naturally, and from that, I opened up. We had a very strong holistic philosophy in my house. But then when I went to school, I was really, really conditioned to do Western philosophy and Western medicine and vaccinate everybody and get mad at my mom and my grandma for feeding them like table scraps or whatever, right? So, pretty quickly in my career, I started getting some pushback from my mom and my grandma saying, this is what you should be doing, like your heart's in helping animals and making animals' lives better. But since you've been doing this, everybody's getting sick, right? So these farm dogs that were, didn't need to see a vet, and they were large breed dogs and dying when they were, 16, 17 years old, and cats dying when they're 27 because they, as horrible as it sounds, they're, out hunting and they get run over by a tractor because they're blind and they're still hunting. And, just like amazing, amazing quality of life and longevity
Hmm.
without chronic disease. So, my mom and my grandma put two and two together quite quickly, but it wasn't until I'm very stubborn, like I'm a very stubborn person. And if I believe in something. So um it wasn't until my dog then actually got cancer when he was 4.
Wow.
And I know, mixed breed, 4 years old, and I was just like, it just knocked me backwards. And I went to my mom and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And she said, yes, you do. Call Virginia. And Virginia was our naturopathic doctor from kids. And she really opened my eyes. She's like, stop feeding them this food. Take, he went to an internal medicine specialist and he had to have a surgery and stuff. But saying that, I couldn't get in to see him he couldn't get surgery for 2.5 weeks. And in 2.5 weeks, she made up um, SEX suppositories, and we started giving him all of this stuff and really working hard on him. And it was just inside the it was in his bowel, but we were able to, it was close enough to the exit point where when we did put the suppositories in, there was actually a connection with them. So anyways, they gave him a very, very good prognosis. They told me that he was probably going to have a huge resection of his bowel, and that they didn't even know how much farther it had been. Um, it had invaded the bowel until, until the resection happened and stuff like that. So I took him, we were treating him, and I took him, and I got a phone call. I actually was in staying at a hotel because I didn't want to leave him, and where the clinic was, the hospital was, and they called me after, and I remember his name was Dr. Smith, and he said to me, "I don't know what you're doing, but don't stop doing it because it's gone from the size of a very, very large walnut that was really invasive to a small grape in that short of period of time,
Wow.
to a small grape that was completely encapsulated. So it's still there, but we didn't have to resect the bowel, blah, 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 blah." So that I just did a complete turnaround. And once Bruticus was healed, I moved out west and did a 4-year human homeopathic medicine program. And then I was very lucky and wound up getting in with the British homeopathic veterinary surgeon. So I moved to England and did 3 years with them. And then I opened the first licensed holistic veterinary hospital in strictly holistic veterinary hospital, probably in North America, but for sure in Canada. And so um, the products are a product. Me doing things at my clinic and seeing, I wound up, I've actually had 5 veterinary hospitals in Vancouver, and actually saw more than 30,000 patients in my career. So did a lot with a lot of animals, and I was a very like end stage clinic for the first 5 years. So anything that was going to be euthanized or couldn't, cancers and like horrific stuff. And then after that, it started moving into people coming to me as for prevention and things like that. So um, in that process of me working with animals, my primary modality was homeopathy, but I was the first clinic in Canada to sell raw food diets. I was a formulator for a raw food, the first commercial raw food diet in Canada. And often when we were changing diets, we would see issues of GI stuff coming up before we could really get, a solid hold on what we were working on, whether it was cancer, allergies, skin disease, inflammatory bowel disease, it doesn't matter. So I started working a lot with probiotics. I was very well versed in probiotics from my naturopathic doctor growing up. She was into gut health, this Virginia woman. She was into gut health like 50 years ago. So I it was part of my landscape anyways in people. So I just started moving that into animals when I would see them have GI issues. Soon as I started doing that, their chronic stuff seemed to improve and stabilize more, right? I wasn't catching up a lot of times and things like that. So then I started researching deeply gut health and microbiology about 26 years ago, and put a large focus on understanding gut health, like really getting into like deep dive into gut health. So I would say that in Adored Beast Apothecary, I sold my practices, and for a number of reasons, but the number one reason was I was burning out. I was on call for 17 years.
Wow.
Set 24 hours a day, 7 days
That will burn you out quickly. Yeah.
a year. And I also taught a 3-year postgraduate program for veterinarians. And I felt like I graduated 67 veterinarians, and I felt like, okay, I can leave now. I can move on to my next project, which is being able to see how much I can help animals from a much larger perspective through education, through creating formulas so that people can do things on their own, empowering pet parents to be able to, really look at their animals and navigate their health, like not on their own completely, but I'm a very, very, very big believer, even with my practice, and my practice had 7 veterinarians at one time. And I was a very big believer that a pet parent needed to be actively involved in their pet's health. So it wasn't like we know everything and you need to do what we tell you to do. It was all about, okay, you know your animal better than we do. What's going on at home, what's happening with it, your gut sense, your intuition. Um, so we really, really respected that and welcomed that. So
Mhm.
as apothecary, my goal was to produce products that, and this is a really important part, that had been clinically and empirically proven to work in a clinical setting, right? So
Right.
with animal supplements, that doesn't have to happen like human supplements, right? You can create a formula, and as long as that formula is recognized as safe, the ingredients, there doesn't have to be any clinical research done on that formula to say whether that formula works or it doesn't work. So the number one thing I wanted to do was also try and support other companies because I'm very much a collaborative person, and I feel like in order for us to have help animals, really, really help animals globally, that we need to be able to help each other and not be competitive, right?
Mhm.
So I sort of stay in my lane with my ethics, and it's my Adored Beast ethics are incredibly high, like incredibly high. So I wanted to produce a product that I would take personally, a product that I knew worked empirically and clinically in my practice for, 8 to 15 years, some of them,
Mhm.
and in what kind of pathologies and in what kind of situations did I see them working, and how on thousands and thousands of animals. We're not talking like a clinical trial of 8 beagles. We're talking about thousands of animals. So that's what I decided to do. So I sold my practice. I moved out here, and I started producing them. And then now what we're doing is every year that we're practicing, we actually are practicing. See, every year we're developing products and supplying animals with formulations. We have a full-time person in California that just digs into every ingredient that we use. So if we get a certificate of analysis, it's not good enough for me. I look at it, I circle things, I send it back to her and say, find out about this, find out about that, find out about this. And I have the best business partner on the planet. His name is Dion Albert. And he allows me to, he has the confidence in me, and he shares that philosophy. Like if I wouldn't give it to my children and I wouldn't take it myself, why would I give it to my animal? And that's how he feels. And then the other thing that's really important to know about us is that even at my clinic, like I said, I had people flying in from Switzerland and stuff with their dogs to see me that had cancer, and horses and cats and everything. And there was a very popular thing back in the late 90s, and it was called shark cartilage, and all the holistic vets were using shark cartilage for cancer, and people would ask me and I refused to do it because I would never ever ever harm another being in order to help another being. It just, for me, it doesn't fit with my philosophy. I think it's an oxymoron. So I delved very deeply into medicinal mushrooms because
Mhm.
I knew that there was a stronger case and there was more empirical, thousands and thousands of years of empirical proof of what medicinal mushrooms could do. So I really delved into that instead of using something like shark cartilage and started getting phenomenal results with it. So I always feel like if there's an obstacle that I won't do, it usually leads me into a direction of finding something that actually potential well,
Works.
most of the time works better.
Cool.
And so we have a strong philosophy of the environment. Like I'm a mama bear that I won't put anything into my products that could harm the planet, wildlife, anything. from an environmental footprint, like carbon footprint, things like that. So that's sort of our philosophy, is that everything has to be above human grade. Everything has to be low carbon footprint, ethically sourced. Um, that's been the nature of Adored Beast right from the very beginning. I take almost everything in the line. I give it to all my animals, to all my rescue animals. Um, but what we've been doing lately is I've been really digging in the last 5 years, six years, to species oriented probiotics.
Yeah, I think this is really cool. So when we did our training with Tracy, that was one of the things that was super interesting to me. So yeah, I love head right in that direction because I think that is one of the coolest things.
I was asked to do a lecture in PEI at the veterinary university in PEI about gut health. And I did, and that was quite a while ago, 6 years ago. And this very, 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 very smart young veterinarian asked me, she said to me, I love all of this. I love all of this. I think this is all just so amazing. My mom's been, talking to us about gut health ever since I was a little kid. But I have a question. Is it true that all the probiotics that we use on animals are actual people probiotics? And I said, yes. And she said, why is that? Why wouldn't it make sense to be looking at the gut of the species in which we're trying to treat or heal or help? And I said, yes, it would. And she said, well, why don't we do it? And I said, because nobody has. And I said, a lot of things are first tested on people, and then it moves into animals. Like they're tested on animals, but for people.
Sure.
For people. So I was driving home from PEI. It's a long drive, and I was like, okay, there goes my new roof for my house. Here goes my new tires for my truck. So I wound up speaking to somebody that a microbiologist in a company that was starting to look at that in livestock. And I started working with them, and we launched the very first canine species probiotic, uh, like species specific. And then we went into equine, feline, and now we've just launched our wolf line, our wolf probiotic. So what's very interesting, and the way we need to get our heads around that, is that before we did this study, there wasn't a study out there to prove that the probiotics I gave to your animal would actually last and survive the gastric acidity of a dog's gut, because it's very different. Most of them are lactobacillus, right? Lactobacillus bifidus. They're lactose based, which means that they come from cattle, and
Mm-hmm.
or a strain that is in that pH. So the pH of our guts in a cow's gut is very different than a pH of a dog and a cat. So we never knew, was the actual acidity in a dog and a cat's gut too strong for the actual bacteria to survive and land where it needs to land appropriately in the gut and then colonize. So that was the first study that ever happened with these new probiotics, is could they survive that acidity? And
Because, right, like my understanding about a dog's digestive tract would be that they have tons more stomach acid
they
than
do.
we do.
Yeah.
So their ability, to and for good purpose, right? They're eating wild animals when they're, out in the wild and hunting. So the intent would be to kill off any bacteria and to really not let things get through the trap door, so to speak.
Yeah.
It can be so different than things that would work on us, wouldn't necessarily work on
Or
them for that.
cows or horses or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Horse. And the intestinal tract isn't as long, right? So
Hmm.
the acid has to be stronger to digest it faster, right? In order to get it through the digestive tract. So when we look at that, I'm going to back up for 1 second. when we started doing the study and when I started getting into with this other company, understanding what they were doing, um, I knew that empirically the human probiotics work on animals. So I don't want anyone to think that human probiotics don't work on animals.
Mhm.
That's because they do. But you have to use them in such high colony forming units to be able to be sure that the majority of them survive, because they will die off. That's why when we first started doing like love bugs, we put
Mhm.
billion colony forming units in them when most companies were using like maybe 5 million, right? And we were putting 30 billion in, because it was my experience through researching that in my practice that if I didn't give that high of an amount, it didn't make that massive difference that I
Mhm.
wanted to see. Now I didn't do autopsies on these animals to see if they colonized or anything, but I could see empirically either they were getting better and their stools are getting better and their skin's getting better, or it wasn't. And it wasn't, which you could see in the GI parts
Mhm.
faster. Do they still have diarrhea? Is there form? Are they still throwing up? Blah, blah, blah. It was much easier to see that the higher colony forming units we used, the faster and more efficiently the probiotics worked. But they still work. Saying that, what we see in these species specific ones are ones that are really exciting. And that is that they hone in on more of the pathophysiology that animals would get or need to get, like from their physiological point of view, that we see in veterinary health right now. So the all of these species specific probiotics, oh my god, I love that dog. Species
Mhm.
specific probiotics have something called an immune modulating effect. Now, for those people out there that are listening, or the stores, this is a really, really, really important tidbit to understand about gut health and health in general. So a lot of our animals are getting chronic disease and they're getting autoimmune diseases. So skin diseases, cancers, things like that. When we try and work with those, we work with those with things called immune suppressive drugs. So prednisone, Vinectal P, dexamethasone, different kinds of steroids, different types of immune atopic, different types of immune suppressive drugs. Because we're trying to make the immune system, we're suppressing the immune system. But what we're not doing is we're not healing the immune system. We're just pushing it down because it's overreactive. It's like a light, like a motion detector light going off. It doesn't know when to shut off,
Mhm.
whether it's an actual predator or someone breaking into your house, or is it a leaf blowing by, right? It's just like it's on this like alert,
Reactive regardless.
active regardless alert
Mhm.
state. And that's what the body does. And it starts to attack its own cells.
Mhm.
Right? And I'm not saying they in life threatening situations, steroids are life threatening. But in situations where it's chronic disease, in chronic autoimmune situations, suppressing the immune system causes, in my opinion, more disease because the drugs are really hard on the organs and it doesn't last. It just keeps pushing down, pushing down. You have to use them more and more and more and more and more. And when you take them off of it, it has a rebound effect. It's like pushing something down and then letting it go. It comes up and goes over, right? So you're getting
Mhm.
a rebound effect, and the animals are even suffering more from it, and people and everybody.
Yeah.
So what we found, and also when you suppress the immune system, they get secondary infections, right? Because the immune system's low.
Not
So they're,
very guarded. Yeah.
not only on immune suppressive drugs, but they're on antibiotics because they're getting bacterial infections and viral infections and things like that. So then you're destroying the gut microbiome. You're causing all of these other problems. Like you just get on this hamster wheel of chronic disease that manifests into all these other symptomatology that's actually not even the disease process to begin with.
Mhm.
So when we did these tests, it was super cool to see, first of all, that the dogs, it comes from feces, right? So we actually take feces of the animals and we isolate the bacterias, and then we test the bacterias against pathogens, against acidity. We see what they do with cells, right? So these cells wound up being able to suppress, and this is a good way of using the word suppress, pathogenic bacteria. So they were able to hold E. coli, Salmonella, Clostridium, all of these terrible, uh, strong, life-threatening pathogenic bacteria. They were able to hold them at bay and suppress them from getting out of control and becoming dangerous. To me, that makes perfect sense because if
Sure.
they didn't have that naturally in their gut, they would not ever have evolved. So it made me excited because those are the diseases that veterinarians, and understandably so, are most afraid of with a raw food diet. Your dog's going to get this, your cat's going to get this, this is what's going to happen. But when you really think about it from a common sense perspective, they shouldn't be getting sick from those things because not only do they kill prey and eat them, but they'll eat prey that have been dead for days, and
Mhm.
they will scavenge on that, right? And they don't get sick and die. So why is that? Why does their saliva have the ability to should have the ability to lick their wounds and it work like an antibiotic? Because nobody's giving them antibiotics in the wild. They're getting cut, they're getting hurt. Why are they not dying? Because they lick their wounds and their saliva has the enzymes and the antibacterial and the probiotics and the ability to stop that. Whereas now all these dogs are going around with cones on their head because their mouths are so dirty that when they lick their wounds, they actually wind up infecting their wounds. And then they're on steroids and then their body can't adjust.
We start the process all over again.
We do.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
was
and one
excited.
thing I would say really quickly for you to touch on about the immune system and the connection to the gut,
Right.
and how the gut is so much of the immune system. So, like that unhealthy gut.
So it is a huge part. And what I was going to say, what I've never seen before in other bacterias, is that these bacterias had the ability to immune modulate.
Hmm.
That's a word I want everyone to hear, because what that means is if it starts to go into autoimmune, it helps to balance it and bring it down.
Oh.
Then if it goes down and goes into more of a bacterial viral concern, it brings it back up. So this little bacteria, these bacterias can ex- literally explain to the gut how to modulate. That's the postbiotic effect of these probiotics. Our guts, our dogs and animals' guts, they went from 60%, then they went to 79%, and then they're like 87%, and now they're up around the 90s. Of that is what is our percentage that is triggered in our gut, that triggers our immune system, that educates our immune system. So the majority of our immune system comes from the conversations that the gut has and the ability for the gut to regulate our immune system, whether it goes up or down, or what pathogens or what viruses. It is at the minimum 85 to 90% of our and our animals' immune system. So it is vitally important for the immune system, but saying that it's vitally important for everything, hormone regulation, it's vitally important for nutrition, right? To be able to absorb nutrition. I always say you can give the best food on the planet, but if the gut is traumatized or the gut is unhealthy, you are not, you're not wasting your time, but you're getting a fraction of the nutrition that's in that amazing food that you're feeding. So, the first thing that can happen with a traumatized gut, or some people call it leaky gut,
Hmm.
is that, believe it or not, they become malnutritioned. That's like one of the very first thing that starts to happen is the body can't um, create the bioavailability it needs to create in order to absorb their nutrition. And then, but you don't see that happening, right? You don't see a nutritional deficiency until it's really, really bad.
Mhm.
Then they don't even, they're still not checking for it because they're going, wow, you're feeding this and you're feeding that and you're doing this and doing that. They don't even, that doesn't even, in 2023, that's not even coming into somebody's, wherewithal at a vet clinic or anything. Um, are they actually absorbing the nutrition that you're feeding them? And if they're not, why? So we know that that's from the gut. So when you look at, when I talk about gut health, I say that the gut is a foundation of everything that happens in the body, but what it is, it's the conductor. So it's the part of the body that all the systems of the body are vital. And we have to look at every single system. And that's where I think Western medicine fails. We focus on heart, we focus on brain, focus on joints, focus on the spleen, focus on the organs, like we focus on the lungs. We don't look at it as a finite balance of a machine that is interconnected in every single way. Well, something has to interconnect that orchestra. Someone has to be the conductor of that orchestra and tell the body what to do and when to do, and that's the gut. So the gut is the communicator and sends signals to the brain, sends signals to every part of the body of basically what to do, how to shift, how to over, how to under. It conducts it. So it is we have just touched the surface of gut health. We think we know a lot, we know very little. And my concern with it is that we're westernizing it a little too much. So what we do with Adored Beast is we feel like diversity is everything.
Mhm.
So we have a line of probiotics that you can rotate without having to be a scientist. Very, very, very easy to use. That we can rotate the probiotics in our line and make sure that your animals are getting the diversity that the gut needs to be healthy, like really, really healthy. If you think of a garden isn't healthy with one thing in it, right? Or putting one type of fertilizer in it or doing it needs diversity, right? We know we're learning that more and more and more and more and more that bacteria and forest floors and our ocean floors, if we lack diversity, we we start to decrease the homeostasis of that environment. And that's paramount for gut health. Paramount is that you're bringing in new things all the time and you're planting different things and you're getting the gut to signal different things. So when you use our products the way they've been formulated, is not only do you plant different diversities, but I have formulated that they help certain things or they sort of focus, not they focus on the entire body, but they're a little heavier in weight, possibly for organs or
Mhm.
for anti-inflammatory response or for bioavailability and digestibility. So when you're doing that, you're slowly over the course of a year giving the animal and giving support in every area of the body that all the systems of the body. And you don't even, and that's what I said, you don't have to be a veterinarian, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, you don't have to be a scientist, and you don't have to take a ton of time as a pet parent when you're running your kids to soccer and you're doing this and you're doing that and you're doing the best you can. The stores are we have the training for the stores that people can come to you and say, this is sort of going on, and then the stores can go, okay, let's use this one now, and when that one's done, come back, let's see how they are, then we might shift over to this one, right?
Yeah.
Or stay on that one a little longer. It's really easy because if I didn't formulate something that, like one of our formulas, if you were to go out and try and replicate that formula, you would have to buy 36 independent ingredients
Wow.
and figure out how to put those 36 independent ingredients into your dog or your cat or your horse's dish, right? So we've made it very simple because it's hard for people to source out quality ingredients, first of all. So they don't have business. We've taken a lot of the guesswork out and made it easy because the best thing to do is to do it, right? But if you get overwhelmed, people tend not to do things.
Easier to excuse it away.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so what you're saying is like you have different lines of probiotics that people can rotate in between, and each probiotic has maybe a different focus to it, but it's good to rotate through it. And here we're really big with our staff to encourage our customers to rotate through pet food too.
yeah,
So rotate through proteins, rotate through what you're feeding. So it's the same concept of rotating the probiotic that you're giving to a company, that so that you're focusing on different parts of the body
yeah.
throughout that rotation, in the same light for the same reason.
And for the same reason. And then the other thing that we're doing too is I've been doing a lot of research in the last 2 years with pre and postbiotics, because that's really, we hear about probiotics a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but what we don't understand, especially for allergies and things like that, we need to understand what the postbiotic effects of that probiotic does. And you don't get a postbiotic effect unless you are making sure that you have the synergistic alignment of the right prebiotic, which is the food that feeds the probiotic. Get given the right prebiotic and then the right probiotic strains, you create this magic called postbiotics.
Mm-hmm.
Postbiotics is what actually is doing is making the health claims, right? Is creating the short chain fatty acids and creating the immune modulation effects and creating all of this wonderful, antiviral, antibacterial, anti all of that stuff. And right now in the probiotic world, um, there aren't prebiotics that are much more than sugar. I mean, that's kind of what they are.
Or things like that. It's all the form of sugar for sure.
Maltodextrin, FOS, inulin, that sort of thing. So when we started, and when I started at my clinic, it was very hard for me to give anything that was just to do something, that didn't have a functional medicinal value to it. So my prebiotic of choice was large, right, from a very, very long time. And that's because I dug in to thought to myself, how did animals get prebiotics in the wild? How did that happen? And the majority of them was from the fermentation of the gut of their prey, of what that prey ate. So I started looking and I started using something called larch because it's bark. It's made from the bark of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And almost every single thing, like squirrels, birds, rabbits, mice, deer, elk, eat bark.
Wow.
So it was the closest to something species oriented that I felt would work the best with animals rather than, like I said, maltodextrin, inulin, things like that. So I started using that, but then towards like the last 2 years, I'm like, okay, I want to start looking at new prebiotics. What are new prebiotics? So we did a big research project from Edmonton with the microbiology, and our two new lines, our two new probiotics that just came out with functional prebiotics, the first in the world. The wolf strain is the first in the world. And one of them is made from chlorella. Chlorella is the prebiotic, and the other one is turkey tail mushroom.
Mushroom. Okay.
So our wolf strain comes with the medicinal mushroom. So it's not just feeding sugar; you're actually feeding something that has a very strong medicinal component to supporting health. And then the same with the chlorella. So the chlorella has incredible, incredible health benefits, but it is an incredible prebiotic, and so is the turkey tail. So we are, so first to sort of coin the term functional prebiotics, which just shows that our company is every single minute of the day looking at what is going to create more health? What can I minimize that isn't doing anything just for the sake of putting it into a jar? And none of our products have ever done that. There is no non medicinal value in anything that we put in. That's why our jars are so small.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody looks at a jar of Adored Beast, I've got one right here. So you look at something like this, and then you look at the cost of this tiny little jar, and then you look at a great big huge jar, and it's the same cost. And you're like, how does that even compute? But if you look at the serving size, they'll be the same serving size. And the difference is that this has no fillers. And I do that for many reasons, is because I don't believe in fillers in any shape or form. And I also feel like our animals' food is a really important part of their day. And I don't want their food to taste like supplements.
Yeah.
So I worked very, very hard. It's not easy to put everything that you need in the serving size into something like this. It takes a lot more time and a lot more headache and a lot more everything. But I wanted to be able to use a sprinkle or an eighth of a teaspoon or a small amount and mix it in food so that their food predominantly still tastes like their food. So, a lot of time and energy goes into every single one of our formulas. And the last, so we have a leaky gut protocol because I believe that a lot of chronic disease that people are dealing with, like allergies, it stems from leaky gut.
Mm-hmm.
We have a yeasty beast formula so that the formulas, the protocols themselves are start to finish, right? So they have homeopathic remedies in them to help the animal deal with the suffering that is being caused in that in that state until the body can heal, right? So it helps with the itching and the inflammation and the stuff that makes their cortisol levels rise, which then makes the healing process longer and slower. So in these little protocols, they're literally protocols that I use at my veterinary hospital. And I've just put them into small little things that are easy to understand that people can really get a handle on dealing with their animal's health on a deep level, like a really deep level. So it's kind of where we're at right now, and we couldn't find medicinal mushrooms that I was comfortable with, and so we purchased a 100-acre woodlot and started a lab, and we are producing our own medicinal mushrooms. Um, we do a lot behind the scenes, a lot behind the scenes.
So, like the number one use of mushrooms here recently that has been, I think, a little bit more talked about would certainly be cancer
Yeah,
and their cancer fighting properties. But talk about more uses of mushrooms and kind of the uses in which maybe every day or something a little bit more common.
for sure. I mean, the medicinal mushrooms are, they are the most well researched in cancer. And we one of the first things that we were asked with our mushrooms, why would you put them in a tincture? Why aren't they in powders? Why aren't they in this? Why aren't they in that? So my first answer to that was because I worked so closely with cancer at my clinic and dealt with a lot of chronic diseases. Because don't get me wrong, cancer is a scary situation. The rise of cancer in our animals
Mhm.
is exponential. I mean, they're saying that one in every two dogs, which is more like 50%, will get cancer. So, when my experience is that when an animal is tipping that scale, because you don't know when their bodies are starting to go, I'm not killing my health. I'm not my healthy cells are not regenerating the way they should be. So now I'm forming cancer cells. Like that's all going on for a very long time before you actually see signs and symptoms, right? So I always go into how do I give an animal something that is going to be accepted by the body the easiest. If something has to be digested, it's going through an extra process. So with the mushrooms, I decided to do them as actual tinctures, so they don't have to be digested. Right? They're going in, and their accessibility for the body and the bioavailability for the body to consume them is is one less of a step. Right? So it's really easy for them to access the health benefits from it that way. The other thing is that they go through less of a process. So they're more in their potent state. They have to be processed less.
Okay.
So that's why they're a tincture. So what you just have to think about this. When you're using medicinal mushrooms as a support for when your animal or your loved ones at home have cancer, those same properties are going to be very helpful as a method of education for the body to try and keep the cells healthy before they go sideways, right? So,
Hmm.
I have to be really careful what I say. Like if I say cancer prevention or I say cancer treatment, I'm not even allowed to use those words. But you don't have to. It's not a big step to go, if this helps here, then it's not a big stretch to look at, could it not help it from going there?
Right.
So when we look at medicinal mushrooms, they have a huge support on the immune system. So if the immune system in the body is working in its prime way, the chances of those cells going sideways are less. We know that inflammation is one of the number one reasons for chronic inflammation, is one of the number one reasons for cancer and for chronic disease. So why we should be looking at anti-inflammatory foods and properties prior to being diagnosed with some kind of, horrific disease.
Hmm.
If And that's why we have to look at everything from a very high level, and we have to try to tick off all the boxes. Yes, I'm an owner of a supplement company, and yes, I'm a formulator, and yes, I had a veterinary hospital for 27 years, but everything has to be looked at. What's their stress levels? What's their quality of life? Are they bored all day long? Do they are we looking at their lives and enriching their lives? It's not just about food, and it's just not just about supplements. It's a it's a it's a um it's a it's a an entire look. That's what holistic is. It's
Hmm. Whole body.
everything, but not just body, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people, it's like we have to look at the body as a holistic thing. We have to look at the environment. We have to look at their environment. How long are they spending time alone? Are they a cat that someone says goodbye to at 9 o'clock in the morning, doesn't get home until 9 o'clock at night? And are they living alone without enrichment things? Because all of that affects their health.
Hmm.
Deeply affects their health. What food are we feeding them? We know that if we feed beef, or if we feed an animal that's been highly stressed, those stress hormones are in that meat. And then we are feeding that to ourselves and to our animals, or whoever eats meat. I don't eat meat, but for people that do, and we know that the cortisol levels in meat increase cholesterol. So it doesn't take a lot to connect the dots of what is causing disease right now, right? Like if we can't mitigate everything. We can't stop us from breathing in air that's got pollution, or our animals running on the ground that there's glyphosate and things like that. We can't put them in a bubble. I mean, I wish we could sometimes, but we can't. So how do we look at what we can mitigate, what we can improve on, what's free? Air, love, sun, shine, fun. Like when I hear people talk about expenses, and all the expenses are going up. Well, expenses are going up, but it doesn't cost anything to love your animal. It doesn't cost anything to take it for a walk. It doesn't cost anything to, maybe not be on our screens as much, and spend more time with it enriches our lives too. So I think it's important to to look at everything and check off as many boxes as we can. And when we do that, it often helps us as well. Like our animals teach us things, and sort of force us to maybe settle down, and be more focused, and intimate, and you know and,
Well,
and
it's certainly using products to help set the body up to combat those environmental things, and setting a body up to be more prepared when those type of free radicals come at you. You know,
every,
gives you the ability and gives your pet the ability to combat those things when they have a more perfectly harmonious system.
yeah. Well, I mean, homeostasis is the key to everything. And what's so interesting, if you give the body the right supplements, if you give the body the right tools, it
Hmm.
has a brilliant ability to rebalance itself. It knows what it needs to do. It just needs the tools to do them, right?
Yeah.
So I think, for your stores that are new to Adored Beast, um, I think that one thing is that, knowing that these products have worked for so long, it's not just, oh, we're jumping on the bandwagon now because pet supplement industry is huge and blah 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 blah. I mean, this has been my life in my wheelhouse for very, like, close to 30 years. So it never, for me, it's always evolving, it's always changing. But what is very different, I think, between us and some other companies is that I'm a science nerd, but part of the science that I'm really delving into now is what was happening. Okay, so I'm 64 years old, and when I was 20 years old, my animals weren't sick like animals are now. When I
Yeah.
was 16 years old, the majority of the dogs on our farm were collie shepherd crosses. Big animals, big dogs, 90-pound dogs. And I would have to say the majority of them lived till they were 17. And they weren't having the vet come up every 5 minutes. And they were euthanized because they were old, right? Or, heaven forbid, they got hurt or something like that, right? But they lived healthy lives, and long, healthy lives.
Hmm.
So my focus right now is, yes, I'm a science nerd. I've got, cancer projects going on at Dalhousie University right now. I've got microbiology research and studies going on in Edmonton. Like, I'm all over the place. I've got medicinal mushroom studies going on. But I keep going back to what happened, what happened, where were we at, what were we doing, and what I keep coming to is this compartmentalization of natural health,
Hmm.
right? Like, we are turning natural health into Western medicine. We're not too far from that stretch of, like, being in that box. And natural health doesn't work like nature doesn't do what it needs to do in a box. It
Sure.
does what it needs to do through millions of years of knowing what to do. And we, it's us launching the wolf strain. The results we are getting from this wolf strain, like the testimonials, so quickly, it's amazing, and it makes me so happy because it's doing what I thought was going to do, because these wolves haven't gone through the antibiotics. They haven't gone through the urbanization. They're getting such a diverse diet, right? They're eating all different kinds of things. They're resilient. They know what they need to do to evolve, right? So we're getting sort of this, like, virgin, for lack of better words, gut microbiome that has the fingerprint, because we know that it has DNA. We know that we know that this bacteria, like when you do fecal transplants, people and animals, we have to be very careful because people and animals can actually take on the personality of the donor,
Oh, wow.
right? So with mice, feeding aggressive mice, doing fecal transplants with a mouse that's aggressive to a mouse that's not aggressive will cause the mouse that not isn't aggressive to become aggressive. So we know that it has, we know what it has. So the nice thing about using probiotics in comparison to fecal transplants is that it's not a transplant. The body will then take what it needs and it adjusts to it. So we're seeing things with this wolf probiotic and this wolf strain with emotional, crazy emotional shifts for the better with fearful animals, animals that have been traumatized, animals that have, you know, like history of being aggressive, becoming non-aggressive,
Mhm.
right? So it's not what you
I've
would
heard of
think.
people doing that with dogs, having dogs that they maybe feed a kibble or a more processed diet and switching them to a raw diet and putting them on some supplements and the aggression minimizing.
Huge.
Yeah, in a
That's
huge
that
way.
brain access, right? But
Yeah.
when you can then continue to give those bacterias with the fingerprints of animals that have been, that are still much healthier animals, like you're not going to find, like we the wolf group that we took it from was a very old colony of wolves, or pack of wolves, from, meaning historically old, wild wolves. And so when you take that, you're not going to be able to find a much healthier microbiome, right? These wolves, some of these wolves can weigh up to 100, and I think it's 140, even sometimes 170 pounds, some of these big gray wolves. And the average life expectancy of them in the wild, dealing with the environments and the cold and everything that they have to deal with, is between 12 and 16 years of age,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So something they're their coping and their ability to their resilience, something is happening because they don't live easy lives. They're being trapped, they're being hunted, they're being shot, their territories are being taken over by buildings and stuff. Their territories getting smaller and smaller, but it's not affecting their
Longevity.
resiliency,
Yeah.
right? So seeing that happen in dogs is just what it does for me. I always say that when I do a research and I actually launch something, I feel like I'm birthing a child because I've been working so hard on it and I'm so excited about it and I've done so much work on it. And then to get the feedback, oh my gosh, I've fed this to, I tried this with my dog, and it had this, it's been like something like major PTSD, like major, like wouldn't eat, was scared,
Hmm.
you can imagine, and was getting really aggressive around food, but wouldn't actually eat its food. It had some kind of trauma happen to it, and they within a very short period of time, like 2 weeks, and they had done everything with this dog for a couple of years, behavioral modifications, like all everything. Within 2 weeks, it started eating,
Wow.
and there was nothing else new except for the wolf strain. So that gut brain access, we know. I mean, they're working with children with ADHD and Alzheimer's patients and things like that. We know that our gut brain access is massive.
Hmm.
So it's super cool. I don't think you'll ever really see us honing in on this bacteria for this, because I don't think the gut works that way, and I'm not going to go down that slippery slope of it being so compartmentalized. I would prefer to give something more whole and
Hmm.
allow the body to adjust and know what it needs to do, and
Hmm.
and create that diversity. But
It it is so amazing. I mean, you talk about the gut. brain connection. And so much of our Western medicine does so tremendously affect the gut and open up the gut to allow some of that into the brain to really affect neurological status. So,
Oh,
I mean, I know we're delving into so much, but it is amazing how connected all of that is.
it's completely connected, and we can't disconnect it. And like I said, but I'm also a little worried that they're going to be like, oh well, this bacteria is for the brain, and this bacteria is for this, and this bacteria is for this, and this, they're already doing it, this bacteria to lose weight, and this bacteria
Mhm.
to do. It's like, I think that in the immediacy of something, if an animal or a person is having heart failure, or they're in full blown Alzheimer's, or they're going down that Alzheimer's road, I think it's wonderful, wonderful that we could maybe expedite it, or support it a little bit more in that realm. But to just look at that, I think we are going to find ourselves in a big mess, because
Mhm.
that's not how the gut works. The gut works as this environmental, um, um, rich, diversified. I always say it's like a forest floor,
Yeah.
right? It needs so many different things to for it to perform in its brilliance that we can't even see. We can't see it with a microscope. We can't see it on an autopsy. We still can't visually see it. We can empirically see it, but we can't even hone in on a sign. We don't even have the tools yet. We haven't we haven't created the tools that we can look into it like this cosmos and go, this is what's happening here, and this is what's happening there. And we were able to do that with trees a while back, when I lived in Vancouver. The UBC did a study and was able to inject this mother tree and watch where she sent her nutrients to, and found out that she was able to shut off certain nutrients and send specific nutrients to a section of trees that needed just that nutrient.
Wow.
How it went there was through the mycelium, the root system, and the mycelium system of mushrooms,
Wow.
right? So it's this interconnected universe, the gut, that we are just tapping into, and we have to be very careful that we don't westernize it too much, because I think we are going to do a lot more harm than we could do good if we do that.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's great for everybody to work together on this and bring their strengths forward, and then contribute to the overall health and wellness of people and animals.
Well, what comes to mind when you're describing all of that is an orchestra, right? And so all of those different instruments in the orchestra come together and create this sound together. But if you had an orchestra full of violins, or an orchestra full of cellos, or an orchestra full of just one instrument, you would never get the same sound or get the same song. And so you need all of those different instruments and all of those different artists to make
Right.
it.
And then you need a conductor to
Yeah.
make it all work, which is what I was saying, which is the gut.
Yeah. So
It
it's amazing. Well, I feel like the luckiest girl in the world to have you here this week and to have had Billy Hokeman from Green Juju here. You guys are both wonderful inspirations in the pet industry, and we feel so lucky to have Adored Beast in the store. And anybody who's been watching this and does watch it after, some people will catch it later this evening. You can look in the comments, and I would encourage you, Julie, to go ahead and do this later this afternoon. There are so many comments talking about, I've been using leaky gut, the protocol. I've been using the wolf is a blessing in a bottle. So many different testimonials for Adored Beast in our comments. And as I sit here and listen to you and listen to some of these things, I think of two of my dogs in particular that I'm going to immediately go start them on different protocols, because I can think of two different dogs that I need to get a little bit more balanced with their health. But Mother Nature is a funny thing, right? She, just like Mama Bears, knows exactly what is needed.
does.
And So I think Mother Nature really is a cool creation, and I think we screw with her a little bit too much sometimes, and
Well,
don't trust her.
no, we, unfortunately, as science thinks we know more,
Mhm.
and we definitely don't. And I am always saying we need to go into the school of Mother Nature and let her teach us instead of trying to take Mother Nature and stick her into our box of what we see for very short periods of time, you
Yeah.
know. And then 10 years later, that science just went out the window,
Wow.
right? Or
Very, very much so.
yeah, I know. And Billy's awesome. I love Billy. Billy and I have very, very, very similar views on things. And we've been collaborating to support each other for a long time. And he's great. And yeah, I every time we get on to do a talk, we're always like, oh my gosh, we're like yakking after for like an hour, and it's just like yeah, he's just so awesome. I really love him.
Yeah, I can talk to him for hours too, and it just is so much information, and unfortunately, in such a short period of time. But I would invite all of our followers who may be watching this. Come into our stores, find what you need from the Adored Beast. If for some reason we do not have it on our shelves because we don't yet carry the full line, we're happy to order whatever you would like,
Yeah,
and happy to place an order for you from the Adored Beast to carry and stock whatever it is our customers are wanting us to carry, because we are adding to the line as we go. We kind of started with staples and then we're kind of growing it as we go.
yeah.
But well,
Is
yeah,
guaranteed too, right?
yes,
So we guarantee everything that if people aren't happy with it, they just send it back. Like it's not even a thought process for us other than to write out why, because we
yeah,
have very strict um SOPs when it comes to making sure that we know exactly what's going on with every product. But
yeah,
we never question anybody. It's like, it didn't work for you, bring it back. I think a couple times I've even been on, people have been on like my AJAs, which I do once. I do the first Wednesday of every month. I'm online and I just answer people's questions. And just on Wednesday, I said to someone, take back. Don't even start using the healthy gut. It's not probably what you want to do. Use this one instead. Don't worry. If you got it at a store, just say that I said to take it back. Put a mark thing on it. Just send it back and get this other product instead. So we're very, very. We just want animals to get better. We really do.
I would say we sit much in that same seat together. I want animals to live their best lives, and our animals are so important to us and are such a lifeline that you want them to stay as healthy and happy as long as they possibly can.
Yeah,
So it's such an important thing to have these products available for them that are species specific, to help them thrive as long as they possibly can. Well,
yeah.
so are there any parting words? Anything that you would like to add?
Well, just a shout out to all to stores, right? And for you doing this, and you guys are sort of an extension of me to some level, because on my own, 35,000 animals is a lot of animals. I mean, didn't do it by myself, like with my vets at my hospitals and stuff, but it takes courage to open a store that really digs in to the philosophy that you just said. And I feel like it's really important, and it's not easy to to be a store owner and educate yourself as much as you're educating yourself, and choose products that may not be as you know I don't know. It just to be a destination store and to come outside the box of the big box stores and things like that. It takes courage, and it just shows how much your heart's in it. So I want to thank you
Thank you.
for doing that. And again, yeah, it's just it's animals are a massive gift for us, and if people do decide that they want to try Adored Beast, they can also rest assured that all animals matter to us. It's not just our dogs and cats. I mean, I have a huge rescue. I have 40 animals here that are my family. And but never a day goes by that I don't that I pass judgment that one animal is not worth more than another.
Mhm.
So kind of like when we talk about, for me, it's all animals matter. So when you pick up a product at Adored Beast, you can be sure that it's not a supplement that's been sort of greenwashed to look natural and all fluffy. That every single thing, our focus, one of our focuses and our mandates is that we are protecting Mother Nature. Because without Mother Nature, we don't have these supplements, right? Without her, we don't have this. And we try to give back to that as much as we give to everything that we do, with ABA.
Well, very cool. Well, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
coming on today, and good luck with securing the farm and getting everybody cozy. We really appreciate you taking the time and chatting with us, and definitely look forward to more conversations. I hope to see you soon at the upcoming trade show, and talking more about the products that we could get in from Adored Beast. So thank you, Julie. We appreciate it. And thanks everybody for joining us today.